It's Friday the 4th of October and welcome to From the South. Hundreds of small Argentine farm producers marched in Buenos Aires to demand better working conditions in protest against Mauricio Macri's austerity measures. They ultimately gathered in the central Plaza de Mayo, in front of the Casa Rosada government house. The farmers donated vegetables to highlight their poor working conditions and demand help from the government. Nicaraguan President Daniel Ortega is expected to win a third consecutive term. One poll published this week showed 69.8% of those surveyed plan to vote for Ortega and his leftist Sandinista National Liberation Front party. This comes under claims that he runs an autocratic government, with fears that Ortega's sway over the courts, police and armed forces will make it hard to change governments. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has rejected an opposition set deadline to Vatican-led mediation talks between his government and some opposition leaders. One major opposition party has expressed dissent, with their supporters fearful that Maduro is playing for time. Opposition leaders said that they would wait until November 11th before possibly quitting talks and returning to street tactics, if demands were ignored. In a speech on Thursday, the president criticized the timetable and urged patience. During her first trip abroad since she was removed from power, ousted Brazilian President Dilma Rousseff denounced in Uruguay on Friday a process aiming to regress and go back on social achievements in her country, adding that South America's people's governments are under attack across the region. The former president also made a passionate defense of democracy, referring to what her Workers' Party denounced as a parliamentary coup to evict her from office. One person died during clashes on Friday after tens of thousands of hardline Muslims rallied on the streets of Jakarta demanding a resignation of the Christian governor. A dozen Muslim groups have accused Basuki Tadhaja Purnama of blasphemy after he jokingly said his opponents had used a verse from the Quran to deceive voters. The verse implies that Muslims should not choose non-Muslims as leaders. Police said the number of demonstrators in central Jakarta swelled to roughly 150,000 in the hours after Friday prayers. By late afternoon, the crowd grew restless. Some threw rocks at the police. 2 vehicles were torched and a fire broke out near the city's national monument. Police responded with tear gas and water cannons. After clearing several villages on the way, Iraqi federal police prepared on Thursday to retake Hammam al-Ali, a key town in southern front of MOSUL, as Iraqi special forces continued to advance in an eastern neighborhood of the city. Some armored vehicles from the elite counter-terrorism service returned from the streets of Al-Karama a few hours after moving in and encountering fierce resistance from the Islamic State group. After daybreak, bulldozers and tanks backed by airstrikes pushed into the streets of Mosul from the east for the first time since Iraqi forces launched a broad offensive to retake the city. A number of Nigerians are returning to their homeland after making difficult journeys to Europe after finding it was not full of the promise they had hoped for. In 2015, 153,000 migrants arrived in the European Union via the Italian coast. According to the International Organization for Migration, the largest number, about 22,000, were Nigerians. In May last year, Brussels opened talks with Abuja to make readmission agreements easier and oblige Nigeria to take back its nationals. Russian President Vladimir Putin has unveiled a giant statue of his namesake Vladimir the Great, a revered leader and Orthodox saint. The 17-meter monument of Vladimir the Prince, who converted modern Russia's precursor state, Kievan Rus, to Christianity, has sparked controversy over fears it could blot Moscow's historic center. The opening of the statue, backed by the influential Orthodox Church, comes as the authorities under Putin continue to stoke a wave of nationalism fired up by Moscow's 2014 annexation of Crimea and subsequent standoff with the West. More on these and other stories on our website telesurtv.net/English.